Yo, what up, Grizz Nation, and welcome back to another post game. Nah, it's not the post game anymore. Listen, we're coming to you live from the off season, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. We're going to get into him one second, but it is Greg Waddell from Sleepers Media. Listen, I have, obviously me and Greg are friends, but I sent out kind of a message, and then Greg made sure I knew that he loved Zach Edey. And his first question was, I want to come on the show because I want to tell the city of Memphis why I love Zach Edey, why he is going to be a good NBA player. And honestly, I'm not sold. And so I wanted to find out a little bit of what his thoughts are because he is the college basketball expert. Listen, I'm just a dummy here trying to host a show. And so I'm going to listen to Greg. I'm going to kind of see if he can change my opinion, but we'll see. Listen, we are presented to you by Heaven's Healthy Kitchen. So if you want to find out some of the best vegan gourmet food, go check out Heaven's Healthy Kitchen at orderhhk.com. And we also, at the halftime show, we're going to bring in Ryan Meadows to talk all things Grizzlies. We're going to kind of give our thoughts on what the lineup looks like. We're also going to give a little bit of what free agency is going to look like, what else we do looking at the pick, because we haven't had a chance since the draft night to share our thoughts overall. But you know who we have. We have Greg Waddell, but I know what you're all waiting for. And I'm going to say this, the last thing is, do we have Big Daddy Nate yet? Listen, I didn't expect Nate to have a kid. Neither did he. But late last night at 2:30 in the morning, Nate was becoming a father. And so shout out to Miss Qualls, but also their beautiful baby boy. And so Nate will have a chance to share that with you on his own personal time. But because we're family, I was going to share that with you that he did become a father. So shout out to Nate. But that's all we got. Listen, awesome. Congratulations to Nate and his family. But we're going to go ahead and get into the show. And we're going to go ahead and bring Greg in now. Yeah. All right, Greg, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm great. I begged you to come on this show, DG. That's what happened. Like, I was on vacation, and Zach Edey goes to your team, and I know how passionate Grizzlies fans are because I see them on my timeline from time to time, thanks to you. And I got to be honest, I'm a big Zach Edey supporter. I'm not a Purdue fan, but I'm a fan of his. And the reaction was not as positive across the board as I was hoping it would be. I had to come defend my guy, and here we are.
Yeah, that was the thing. And I'm going to change his layup a little bit because I don't like the way that looked. But listen, I love Zach in the college game in a sense. Like, I think he is built for the college game. Honestly, he can roll into the paint. He can be that player. And so I'm not completely sold yet. Listen, I've watched so much film on Zach ever since we picked him up. And so listen, to me, I think he could be good. And I'm going to share a little bit of why I think there is a big boom, but also a big bust. But I think that the floor is high, and I'm okay with that part of it. But I'm not sold on the fact that, hey, you draft a guy at 9. It was in a somewhat bad draft, as people will say. And so I'm not completely sold on him just yet, but I know there's a lot of people that are loving Zach Edey, but I know there's a lot of people that are out just like I am. But first of all, listen, I'm not going to get into Zach just yet. I want to ask about you. Listen, y'all had the Sleep-a-Palooza, is it Draft-a-Palooza, whatever you had. Listen, it was 4 hours. Were you tired?
Oh, yeah. 100%. But also, we planned that whole ordeal thinking somewhere along the way things would go wrong. And so we booked 22 guests, worst case scenario, half of them don't show and it'll feel like a normal show. And then everybody showed up, which was awesome, but we had no idea what we were doing. Luckily, our guests were great, so it kept it very fast paced and moving. And by the end, I think Carter and I were wired. We FaceTimed each other after. We're just we need to sleep right now.
Yeah, we did the whole full, I guess the 4 hours or so last year. And it was an S show to the point of I was delirious because I didn't know what I was saying anymore. The guests were coming in and out, and I was like, hey, I need to go put my kids to bed. I snuck out for 30 minutes. I didn't even know what happened on the show. I don't even watch it. I got back, and we had one of our guys, Anthony Sane, there. he was just dropping F-bombs and like he was just going off the rails, and it's 11 o'clock at this point. Listen, it is what it is. But hey, shout out to you guys. I watched a lot of it. I watched early before our show because we did a draft show as well. And then I watched a little bit later on, and it was a good time. You had Mantis on. Did he come on?
Mantis was on.
What?
So
Wow.
Mantis was the only person. He appeared. Everybody had like their 10-minute slot. And we put Mantis in the middle because if you're unfamiliar, young Mantis is like a comedic genius, just one of the most entertaining people on the internet. So we throw Mantis in the middle of all these like NBA future players and college basketball coaches and all of this. And Mantis just comes on doing the Mantis thing. Was hilarious. He leaves the show and Hunter Dickinson from Kansas was next up. And I get a text from Mantis 2 minutes after we booted him from the show. And he's like, y'all didn't tell me Hunter was involved. I met him last week. Let me back on. So Mantis was the only person who came on for 2 different time slots. And there's a screenshot that went around of just him next to Hunter Dickinson. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So that's what you get from sleepers on draft night, apparently.
Yeah, I love it. So obviously you took off a little bit of time after that because y'all went on vacation, you and Carter. All right. So before we get into the Zach talk, and also I got to share a little bit of why the comments are the way they are. I'll share that in a second.
Sure.
But I do want to ask what's coming up next for you, because obviously Sleepers Media, listen, y'all are doing a phenomenal job. I've always thought you and Carter are top tier, especially in the college basketball world. And so, one, I envy you a lot of times, but also, like, I just love to celebrate you guys. But what's coming up? What are you going to do leading up into the college basketball season?
I appreciate you. Yeah, it was fun to dip our toe into the NBA world a little bit, but I think at the same time, like, we are understanding there's this big NBA audience that, one, we would love to tap into and haven't yet, and two, probably view us as outsiders and don't necessarily want NBA content from us. Like the more we talk through about these guys we loved in college, we got people coming on like, you don't know anything about my team. Right. And half the time I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't watch the NBA as intently as you do. And a lot of people do. So I think lesson learned, I need to get back in the lab and dial up some NBA film over the summer. But we'll be doing some NBA Summer League stuff, continuing to cover our favorite players from college that have entered the draft. And then obviously college basketball season is already almost right around the corner. College football too. I know you like to bet a little college football with me, so we'll talk offline.
Yeah. So I am actually I'm doing a lot of hosting, but also I'm on the Driving the Line. And so I'm hosting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Anytime coach is out or he's calling the golf tournament this weekend. So anytime he has to do that, he's also filming a movie. And so anytime that happens, he always taps me and I have to go host the show. Now, I guess not a have to, but it's a want to. So I'm hosting the rest of the week. All right. So let's do the comments real quick. So obviously we have Greg in the house. He's ready to tee off. And then King Meeks throwing some slander. Look like a golfer from Happy Gilmore, one of the extras. There's a lot of these other ones too. I know they're starting to talk about I'm ready to caddy for you. All right, so what they have done here, and it has nothing to do with me, but they have just kind of made a life of their own, is they make fun of and clean fun. I tell them all to be very respectful, but they make fun of our guests. And so if there is stuff for you, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to wear it because they're going to go through it. And usually it's the post-game shows. It's even worse. So just kind of stay ready for that. And then you have this guy, dude. That is my guy. He's from what am I thinking of? Driving the Line. Ginja Ninja. Sorry, I almost said that wrong. All right, let's get into the Zach Edey of it all. And I know that's what we were here to talk about. But Zach Edey going 9, did that surprise you? I know Carter called it a while back. I had a lot of intel into him going 9. I just didn't believe it. And so what are your thoughts on him going 9? Is that too high?
I don't think it's too high. It didn't shock me. Now, we could go a variety of different ways with my backstory on this, but I'll be completely honest with you. I've been waving the flag all summer that everyone was greatly overthinking this from an NBA perspective, and I understand why. Like, a 7'4" center is not what the NBA wants anymore. I think if you dropped Yao Ming in this draft, he's not going first overall. Like, that's just a reality of what the current NBA is. And at the same time, I think people are really foolish to ignore the simple fact that if you lined up every player that was taken in this draft in a row and told them to go play a game to 21 right now, or a game to 100 indoors, whatever setting you want, Zach Edey will be the best basketball player in it right now.
Wow.
It's been that way for 2 years. And I understand there's guys from overseas that have averaged anywhere between 6 points and 10 points per game in their most recent season. But guys, I've seen this. Donovan Clingan was the first big off the board. Zach Edey put 40 on his head in the biggest game of his career. So there isn't a human being at any level that Zach Edey has played in the last 4 years that has had any answer whatsoever for him. Like, not one. The closest one was back when he was playing I think it was the U17 or U18 International FIBA event, and Wemby was there, Chet Holmgren was there, Zach Edey was there, Jaden Ivey, his Purdue teammate, were there. All these guys finished on the first team of the event, and like, you're looking around. I'm not comparing him to Wemby by no means, or Chet. They're completely different archetype players, but they were the most dominant players at the event, full of some of the best players in the world. Zach Edey was on par with those guys. So I get there's concerns about his age. I think when you take the age into consideration, you should also take the fact that this kid wasn't playing basketball since he's been 6 years old. Like, this is all a relatively new development, and he kind of stumbled in to the fact that he was a generational college player. His floor's incredibly high. His ceiling, I think, is way higher than anybody's acknowledging. And no, I don't think 9 is crazy. I had said that, from an intel perspective, I thought 7 was the earliest he could go off the board. And that would have been if Clingan had been taken in the first 5. I think Portland was looking for a center and would have seriously considered Edey at 7. Ultimately, he falls to Memphis at 9. And I think it's a perfect landing spot for both parties involved.
So, yeah, Edey falls to 9, and a lot of Memphis is like, all right, that's too high. That's the initial reaction of it. It's just too high, because we've all been kind of given a little bit of like, hey, he should have went 19, 20, because that's what all the mocks say. All right, so let me just clear there. The mocks don't know. Okay, that is plain and simple. Like, a lot of people have the intel and they think that's where they're going to go. There's so much smoke within the NBA draft because they don't want you to know. But there's also a bunch of loose lips that do share a lot of information that will give you a little bit of insight. And so I do understand, because that's the instant reaction. But I also think that 9 isn't too high. But I also think that they would have traded back if they could have fell back a spot or 2. But realistically, falling back a spot or 2, what is that going to get you? It might get you a second-round draft pick in the future. You could go buy some of those if you really need it to. And so I don't think it's too high. I don't think it's too crazy. But I want to know the fit. But I see Wayne's already asking a question. We'll get to that in a second. If you do have any questions, as we always do, just put hashtag Ask Greg. We'll get to that. We'll kind of do a little bit of rapid fire towards the end once we get off topic here. But looking at Zach Edey, how does he translate into the game for Memphis? Because Ja Morant is there. Ja Morant wants to get to the front of the rim. I just see too much in the middle. And I don't know how do you see that? Because the pick and roll is going to be the biggest thing for them. I don't know if he's going to be able to clear out enough to give room for Ja.
Yeah, my initial thought would be this. First off, he's the best screen setter in the draft, and it's not close. I mean, just stature-wise alone and what he does, like, if you're looking for a pick and roll game, there isn't someone better. The kid has great hands. This is not just like he dealt with this in college a lot, where the criticism was he's just too big. It's that he's big and incredibly not quick feet, but he doesn't ever get tired. He doesn't ever get hurt. Knock on wood. He like, teams just resort to fouling him because that's all you can do with someone his size. And he's like a great free throw shooter. You can't hack a shack him. Right. So I truly have not seen a way you can guard him. He played with a guy. Now, this guy's not Ja Morant, but he played with Jaden Ivey in college. And Jaden Ivey in college, that was the same exact concern. It's like, this guy needs the ball. He's lightning quick. He's not going to fit with a 7'4" center. And the year that Jaden Ivey was the star on Purdue, they actually came from the same recruiting class. Zach Edey was not supposed to start. He was supposed to come off the bench behind a senior in Travion Williams at Purdue, who was one of the most fleet of foot, bucket-getting college bigs we've seen in forever, a multi-year starter, first-team all-conference player, all of that. Zach Edey showed up to the first week of training camp that year, and it was obviously clear to everyone that he was way better than this all-conference player. So they kind of went through the growing pains of this, and it took a month. You could see it where Edey and Ivy, Edey had never even started in college, but their games didn't really mesh. And by the end of the season, it got a lot better. I think they learned how to play off each other, and the pick and roll game was stellar. What bodes well for Edey is that Ja Morant is an insanely smarter decision maker than Jaden Ivey is. Obviously, I'm talking on the court, DG, but he's a great passer. He's gonna have extreme space, and with the shooting you have around him too, that's the thing, right? You talk about Des Bane, you talk about Jaren Jackson. I just see if they run pick and rolls in the half court with Ja Morant and Zach Edey with shooters around them, I don't know how anyone guards that. And you're probably not going to do that for 42 minutes a game, but it might be your starting and closing lineup. And I seriously, at a championship level, I don't think there's a team in the league that will have an answer for that defensively.
Yeah, so let's just run through the set a little bit, right? Because I think running you through a little bit of the exercise of the pick and roll. So you obviously have the pick and roll. Let's come from the top of the key, right? And let's say Edey holds the pick. What I mean by that is somebody that might not understand, whatever. You stay on your guy, and at that point, you take them out of the play. And so you're going with that player. And so they have to either then completely fight around you to get to the guy who had the ball, which is Ja Morant here, or they're just going to have to stick on the backside of Edey and potentially fight around to get in front. So at this point, he's taken out one of the players, and the big now has to guard Ja Morant. Is that is that a positive or a negative for Ja if you're going against a big?
I mean, I think it would be an extreme positive, right? That's nobody wants to see that. He's going to cook that, but it goes both ways too, right? Because you can't really switch this stuff because then you're going to be left with a 6'4" guy on Zach Edey. And I can promise you, I don't even know if some of the best defensive bigs in the league are going to be able to guard Zach Edey, let alone littles. So look, you can run pick and roll with anybody. Obviously, you want to have some pop ability. You want to have somebody who's mobile. But I think NBA people who haven't watched Zach Edey his entire college career are really underestimating how mobile he is. Like, that is a part of his game. This is not Boban Marjanovic. This is a dude who literally does not get tired, has really good footwork, and moves well in space, and shot it great at the combine. Like, Zach Edey made more threes in the three-point shooting drills than Jared McCain does. And Jared McCain's doing TikTok dances. And people are acting like Zach Edey's a reach at 9th overall. I'm telling you, the NBA has not seen a player like this in years because there hasn't been one. I mean, he's a 2-time National Player of the Year. There's only 2 guys in history that have done that. They both played 20 years before I was born. So maybe the game has changed. I don't know. But I know if you try to guard this guy one-on-one, nobody can. I know you can't foul him. I know Ja Morant's going to love him. And I know if you put 3 shooters on the floor next to him, they're essentially unguardable.
So on the defensive end, how does that look? Because obviously you do have the defensive 3 seconds, and they're going to try to stretch you out. I know that Zach Edey can play a little bit on the outside on the perimeter, but he's not going to go all the way out there. And so if you're left on an island with Edey, how do you think he does? Do you think he stays, you know what, I'm not going to go over the 3-point line because there's no reason to go that far out there? Or do they try to figure out a way to switch quicker or backside switches, whatever it might be? How do you think they might try to address that?
So defensively is definitely the concern. Like if you're going to paint a picture to me of how does Zach Edey fail in the NBA, it has to be on this end. I don't see a world where he does on the offensive end in any way. On the defensive side of the ball, what I will say, from his time at Purdue, they really did try to just stick him in drop coverage. And because of how special he was on the offensive end, his job was to avoid fouling. His job was not to run around blocking shots as a 7'4" guy. It was pick your spots, be smart in the big moments. Okay, go for it. And you saw that in the NCAA tournament when he swatted the shit out of Dalton Connect and sent him home. But like for the most part, that you can cut the film on this. There were a lot of shots that Zach Edey could have altered that he literally just kind of turned away from and leaned away from because that's what the staff wanted him to do. That's obviously not going to fly in the NBA. There's more spacing in the NBA. He's going to have to get out and guard the perimeter in a way that he didn't in college. You mentioned the 3-second rule. Like, these are all fair questions. I don't know what it's going to do. What I will say is this. If I were trying to envision a roster situation that would protect Zach Edey from his deficiencies defensively, it would start with having Jaren Jackson at the 4. I mean, that is... It's a dream situation for Zach himself, right? Like on offense, there's just shooters and the most dynamic guard in the league. And then on defense, there's one of the best shot blockers we've seen in forever. His only issue is he fouls way too much. And Zach Edey has the opposite, right? Like between the two of them, they're smart enough, I think, to figure this out. And you kind of hope that Jaren can play the aggressive rim protector who guards in space. And Zach Edey can just kind of either hide around the low post or just stay out of the way like he did in college. But you're right. That would be where the concerns come in. But again, Jaren can cover up a lot of those concerns, I think.
Yeah, the defensive end, Jaren, can be a key factor, right? And obviously, they're not going to be on the court every time. Let's go to Jaren because I want to ask you about that because I was talking to a lot of my guys, and we're discussing a lot of who's affected by Zach Edey, right? John Moran is obviously affected by Zach Edey because pretty much everything that Zach Edey does, he has to somehow correlate that with Ja. But then you go the outliers. Desmond Bane is not really affected in a negative way. It's only positive because you're going to have more spacing. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the only one that you can kind of question, like, hey, how do you handle Jaren? Because Jaren, honestly, he played so well this year. He had his best year on a very bad team. How can you somehow keep that going? And so what are your thoughts on Jaren? Because, hey, where did you go to school at again?
I went to Michigan State. I graduated a few years before Jaren got there, but I watched a whole lot of Jaren in person in his college year at Michigan State. And coincidentally, he played the 4 in that college year at Michigan State. That was a big debate for a while with Michigan State fans. Was he supposed to be at the 4 or not? What I will say is this, and you cover this team way closer than I do, so you may have the intel on this. Jaren has always struck me as a guy that does not view himself as a center, does not want to view himself as a center, and has a lot of bad habits if you ask him to play the 5. Yep. To me, I think he's probably ecstatic that Zach Edey's on this team. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then obviously you have some flexibility now. But I think offensively, Jaren has always been at his best when you're utilizing his floor stretching ability, getting him on the perimeter. I think, honestly, as he's grown and developed a little more, there's a little more he can do off the dribble than he's shown. Not that that's something they're going to ask him to do, but, man, it's something he has always had some guard skills. And I think viewing him as like a huge 4 that can really step out and shoot it is better for him long-term than trying to fit him at the 5. But I don't know. It could be clunkier than I'm making it sound for sure. But again, if I were trying to dream the situation for Zach Edey, 30 teams in the NBA, right? I mean, he could have landed on 27 of them that would have said, we'll try you for 6 minutes off the bench, but we don't want to do this. To me, Memphis prioritized him and took him 9th because, one, he has some similarities to centers you guys have had on good teams in the last 5 years. Like, you've had Jonas Valanciunas, you've had Steven Adams, and I'm not saying Zach Edey is those guys, but if Zach Edey hits, he is a bigger version of those guys. And I think architecturally the team makes so much sense for a guy with his skill sets, and it unlocks and frees all these other surrounding parts to focus on what they do best instead of trying to stretch and be something more than they need to be.
He definitely allows your guys that you already have that you're paying the big bucks to, it allows them to be in their role and flourish. The issue is can he allow those guys to do that, right? the biggest thing with the Grizzlies has been rebounding, and you're going back to Jaren stuff. He's not a good rebounder. That's just understood. You know what? I can accept that. Everybody has their flaws, and so I'm going to accept the fact that he does have a flaw in not being a positive rebounder, but he does so many other things well. I just think that he can be a really good guy that can stretch the floor, but I also think, like you were saying, is a guy who can really be an off the ball, maybe weak side swing. You catch it to a 7-footer who can bury it in your eye, or 1-2 dribbles. He's to the front of the rim. If you jump, we jump. I dip, you dip, I dunk. Like, it's going to be that easy. I think, in my opinion, I think they're going to have to figure out a way to use Jaren, but realistically, I think he's going to be a perimeter player when Edey's on the floor, and he'll be a slasher kind of backside. But when he's not on the floor, I think you see him transition to the 5 and play off of a guy like Brandon Clark, who's a smaller guy, right? You can go small. You can run a little bit. I think there's different styles that you can play for this team. All right, we're going to get to the questions. If you got any more questions, ask hashtag Ask Greg. People are calling you Ted Lasso already, which is actually very funny. And they're making fun of your camera, even though it finally looks like it caught on. It was a little blurry. Not a big deal.
Autofocus has had me in hell for like 7 weeks, DJ. I don't get it.
It happens. I don't know. I literally know. I turned this one on and it works. I just said, F it. I'm going to leave it. So I'm just going to, I try not to touch anything. All right. I got to ask about Jalen Wells, because I know nothing about this dude. I know that he's a good shooter. That's all I've ever heard. How does he fit in the NBA game?
If you want my brutal, honest answer, I don't think he does.
Okay.
So we did 75 of these scouting reports before the draft, and we made a big board, and I think we've all had Jalen Wells like somewhere in the 50s. Look, he was fine at Washington State for a Washington State team that overachieved, finished second in the Pac-12. That wasn't supposed to happen. You kind of lump him in with Isaac Jones, who, you know, also is going to get a chance in the NBA. To me, when I watched that team, Isaac Jones was the guy. Jalen Wells was a pure catch and shoot floor spacer. He shot it great. If the shot translates, then he's probably just your prototypical 3-and-D role player. The thing is, I have some pretty serious competition level concerns. Like, this is a kid that played 2 years at Sonoma State before he even got a look at Washington State. He was fine there. I don't think he was anything special. You know, he played a role at Washington State. It's not like he was a star. He really didn't have a lot of pop-off games. He was a catch-and-shoot guy. So if he makes shots, I think he'll stick maybe long enough to find a second contract, honestly. But I wouldn't expect much more than a pure bench spot shooter for 8 to 10 minutes a game.
So I guess if I'm hearing you, it should pretty much, hey, there's upside there because of his shooting. If he can figure out the other stuff, his length is decent. His size, he's small, but he obviously can grow into that because he is, I believe he's 6'7", and he's a guy who can kind of grow with, as he grows into his man body, as I call it. He's a guy that you might have on the end of your bench. Maybe he gets some run here and there. He goes down the G League, try to see if he's developed. If he hits, he hits. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Pretty simple.
I think it's about that. I mean, if I were a GM, like, I would want to see, is he capable of doing anything more than being like a fifth option on the floor catch and shoot guy? So honestly, yeah, throw him in the G League, see what happens. Like, if he, even for a couple of weeks, is like scoring 20 a game and doing some off the dribble things he didn't show in college, then he becomes a whole different level of enticing. But yeah, to me, there were a lot of like just shooters that went off the board in the second round. And of all the ones that I scouted, he was near the most limited of them. He's not the name I would have looked to pick.
Okay. Cam Spencer, obviously we knew him from the UConn team. He's shown a little bit of, hey, he can shoot. He shows a little bit of, hey, he can play a little bit of defense. He kind of got that Memphis swagger, which we love. So he might not do anything else, but maybe try to punk out the other guy that's kind of being a little bit of a B. But what's your thoughts on Cam?
He's tough as shit is my thoughts on Cam. So I first saw Cam Spencer in person when he was at Rutgers, and Carter and I were in Madison, Wisconsin for a Rutgers-Wisconsin game. Wisconsin, it was like the second to last week of the season. Their season was on the ropes. They had to win this game or they were essentially eliminated from the NCAA tournament conversation. And this man, Cam Spencer, who had his two other best teammates for Rutgers sitting out the game due to injury or whatever was going on, This man torched them. He put on a show. He let everyone in the gym know. He was pointing. I think at one point he went out of his way to walk through the Wisconsin huddle. The man is just an insane person, for lack of a better word. And then he went to UConn, and his insane person stuff was unlocked by a true insane person in Dan Hurley, and they won a national championship in a genius offensive system. So, I have said this pretty much every step of the way. I have questions on how Cam's game translates at the NBA level, because he's listed at 6'4". He looks like he's 6'1" to me. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but right. To me, I don't think you're playing him off the ball a ton, or at least you don't want to. He's a smart, gritty defender. He's one of the best shooters in this draft. I mean, he's been supremely efficient at 3 different schools on really, really high volume. So I would say secondary ball handler, shooter with an edge, really timely defender. And honestly, if you're trying to get some bench minutes from him, you could probably even stick him alongside Ja a little bit with the first unit and make his life easier, and he'll just hit big shots.
That's what I like about that potential is we don't really know what he is. And honestly, that might be the bad thing. But in this point, you're talking about deep into the second round. You're taking a guy who has potential, who has the upside that, hey, if he is a guy that you know that you're going to get the effort, and the rest of it, we'll figure it out. Like if he doesn't become a point guard, a backup point guard, if he doesn't become a guy who you can kind of spell Ja with a little bit or run alongside Ja for a good 5 to 8 minute stretch, I think that could be what he becomes. But I'm curious. All right, let's get to the questions, because that's enough about our guys. I don't want to keep you here crazy amount of time. Let's go ahead and look through these real quick. And I know if you have any questions, go ahead and put in there to ask Greg. All right, knowing what we know of Edey, his career and combine stats, do you think that we are too quick to dismiss the potential greatness? Feels like the blueprint is there. I know you hit a little bit on it already, but is it there?
Yes, 100%. I've been screaming this on our show on a daily basis for weeks, and I think at a certain point, some people started to buy into it. It's probably the last time I'm going to get to say it. So DG, let me say it. I'll wax poetic about this. It doesn't square up to me that all of these experts and mock draft content people and NBA GMs, everybody involved, is sitting here saying this is the weakest draft in NBA history. The same time, the first truly generational college player we have seen in 30 years just took Matt Painter to a national championship game. I know NBA people are like, who's Matt Painter? That's an incredibly hard thing to do. The Purdue coach has lost every step of the way in the biggest moment of his whole career. And Zach Edey essentially dragged him with 40-point games and 15 rebounds and never fouling and making every free throw all the way to the title game. Look, he's been the story of the sport for 3 seasons now. All the statistical stuff is wildly impressive. You can go look it up yourself. The winning. This guy's team didn't lose a non-conference game in 3 years. And wow. The game logs every single game for the last 2 are 35-12 every night. I've never seen anyone be able to guard him. And I get it. The NBA doesn't want to play this way anymore. I firmly understand that. But if he's that good, you might have to. And I think Memphis is a smart enough organization to figure out what to do with him. They prioritized him clearly. And he's not going to wither here. He's just not. The situation is too good. We will see closer to the best version of Zach Edey because he's in Memphis than we would have if he had landed elsewhere.
You see the comment here from Black and DJ talking about the Purdue running an NBA-style offense. I didn't study it that much. Is that, in your opinion, do you think they ran kind of an NBA-style offense?
I don't. Okay. I'll be completely honest with you. But again, I would not consider myself a nuanced NBA ball knower, so maybe I'm wrong on this. But look, Purdue had a phenomenal point guard who I will be pleasantly surprised if he ever plays a second in the NBA, in Braden Smith. And he might be the National Player of the Year one of these next 2 years in college. He's that good. He's a triple-double threat any given night. They ran a lot of ball screens with him. Again, Zach Edey's a phenomenal screen setter. He's the best roll man I've ever seen. But to be completely point blank about it, almost every other possession was let's get Zach Edey a traditional post touch. And nobody had an answer for it. I'm telling you, we saw this guy foul out every single team that he played this year. He'd have games with 22 free throws and he'd make 18 of them. And it's like that's more efficient than a regular possession. So I don't think that's what's going to happen in the NBA. But again, even if it's just some pick and roll stuff in 20 minutes a game where they get him a few post touches, I'm not sure there's a big in the NBA that's going to be able to guard him. He like Donovan Clingan. People compare him to Rudy Gobert, DG. That's the whole thing, right? That's why it's not crazy. Donovan Clingan went. Zach Edey baptized this man in the biggest moment of their careers. Clingan was begging for mercy, and it didn't even matter because the rest of UConn was so good. But I don't know how we throw that away. Like, oh, Clingan goes 7th overall, and he's a transcendent defensive prospect, and Zach Edey destroyed him for 40 minutes.
Man, you're getting me. You're getting me. All right, last thing on Edey here. Developing the mid-range shot with Edey, is that kind of what your direction is for kind of creating the much-needed space in the NBA game?
Honestly, I think he has the mid-range shot, and I think maybe you can continue working on that. He certainly didn't shoot many of them in college, but again, it's a different game, and he didn't need to with what Purdue was trying to do. Look, if you can make free throws, you can make elbow jumpers. Yeah. He shot 71% last season on 11 attempts a game from the stripe. That was with a huge slump in February. For most of the season, he was closer to an 80% guy. He was 73% from the line as a junior on 7 attempts per game. Like, the shot is proven from free throw line and in. The question is the three-point shooting that he showed in the combine real? Because Matt Painter didn't let him shoot threes in college. Right. He attempted, I believe, 2 his entire career. He made 1 of them. He banked it in. It certainly didn't look pretty, but like you saw the video, I'm sure, Dan. Like he was shooting the lights out at the combine, and the shot is pretty from the free throw line. I kind of am buying that it could be there, but again, I don't think he necessarily needs that to be what he can be for Memphis.
All right. See, like I said, listen, if you're hitting free throws, you can have a knockdown, mid-range shot. I think he's really good with the hook shot as well because he's already so tall. A little bit of love down low. All right, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of the Grizzlies here. King Meeks wants to know starting 5 for the Grizzlies this year. You're not an NBA guy, but you're not, not even honestly a Memphis Grizzlies guy. But we also know that there's probably Edey that might be questions about. Like, do you start Edey? And I would assume yes for you. But also Marcus Smart, a little bit about him. Do you think that they should go with a guy like Marcus Smart and what you know of him being a starter for the Grizzlies? Or you know what? Let me ask that differently. Do you like him next to Ja?
It's interesting when you think about, like, could Cam Spencer make this roster? Would that change it? I'm not advocating for Cam Spencer starting, but I am advocating for, like, Marcus Smart and Cam Spencer would make a lot of sense together as a bench unit. So that would be a consideration for me. But I mean, I think Smart's in your top 5 players, and I think he does make sense next to Ja, 2 shooters, and Zach Edey, if that's who we're penciling in elsewhere. So I think, like, that's where my heart would be at right now. I mean, the wild card here, too, is Gigi Jackson, who I think I'm higher on than most people, but I really loved what we saw from him the second half of the season.
Yeah, no, Gigi has been phenomenal. And obviously you have Vince Williams on the team. That's kind of, a rising guy. There's so much there with the Grizzlies. They have, 8 through 14. It's tough, and they're going to try to figure that out. And who knows what they're going to do with Luke Kennard. Last question for the Grizzlies. Where do you see them finishing up in the West? Because there have been so many good teams and obviously the young talent coming up. I don't need a prediction. I don't need anything crazy. But your thoughts on the Grizzlies? How do you think they do with Zach Edey, especially as a regular season team?
I mean, I think they're going to be right there as long as everybody keeps themselves healthy and out of bad situations. It's hard because I think we're in a weird time in the NBA. I really do. I was frustrated watching the playoffs because, like, as good as Boston's run was, I can't sit here and, like, feel like they're this transcendent team that nobody can get. Like, it seems like we've seen the Nuggets have a chance and the Bucks have a chance, and now it's Boston's chance to, like, kind of say this is their league. And every other year, it's a different young star that sort of takes the throne, but quickly loses it. So I think the West is a mess right now. I think Oklahoma City and Denver and Minnesota are absolutely going to be there. Outside of those three, I mean, I think Memphis could finish as high as 4th. And truthfully, if Zach Edey is what I think he is, and John Morant just plays 82 games, I don't know why Memphis couldn't be in that group of 3.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it is. If Ja is healthy, the Grizzlies is going to be good. All right, last question I got for you. I know we're over your time, and I said I'd have you on here.
You're good.
University of Memphis. I don't follow the Memphis Tigers, but I just want to ask your opinion on them, just in general, because I know very little other than Penny. And I know he's bringing in some guys, and I've heard a little bit of, they're going to be pretty good this year from what I hear. Just your thoughts, just overall, not too in depth, but just your initial thoughts.
Well, they brought in Carter's favorite college basketball player in NCAA history. That's Dane Danger, who is like an oversized big man. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but like he's just shaped like a king size Reese's. And it works. Like he's an unstoppable, fun post player with like really great footwork. He also like got benched for the entire season at Illinois because they wanted to go small. And now he's at Memphis for his 5th year. But between him and Tyrese Hunter, they have 2 players I really do individually believe in. Everything else is scary. And the way that Penny is orchestrating things is terrifying, or it should be to Memphis fans. Like it really, I'm a Michigan basketball fan. Okay. I just watched Juwan Howard finish his tenure at Michigan. I feel like I'm looking a year in the rear view right now with the way the offseason has gone for Penny. There's a lot of roster spots still relatively open or unfilled. Penny is kind of chirping at the media. I think most people have turned on him. And I think this is one of his weaker teams in terms of pure talent that he's put together. Yeah. So like there are some names that I would keep an eye on, Tyrese Hunter being the biggest. But I don't see this working, man. This kind of feels like this could be the final year if it doesn't go well.
Danger. Listen, that's what I feel like Penny's in, but also that has to be one of the best names. Danger. I love it.
He's so fun, dude. Like he just the fact, like even if you have to go through a really bad season like I did, like you can live with the fact that Dane Danger's your center as long as you get to watch him twice a week. But who knows? Illinois didn't let him do it. I don't know if Penny will.
Yeah, the as Black Ninja DJ saying, the inconsistency has hurt Penny, but also the program just overall. Greg, we are not hurt from having you on. You're one of the best, especially in the college basketball world. If you ever need any betting or NBA stuff, I am always down to come on. Just don't ask me to come on for something like college basketball, because all I can tell you is Cooper Flagg's good. And I hope Duke's good this year. Unfortunately, sometimes we suck late down the stretch. But listen, the Duke Blue Devils made a run. I was shocked, just like everybody else was this year. So I'm hoping maybe we'll get a little Duke love, since I'm not a Memphis basketball fan. Just unfortunately, it's the 90s baby in me. So, but yeah, anytime you ever need me on, by all means, I'll be on. But thank you for coming on as always. We're gonna get to Ryan, talk a little bit of more Grizzly stuff, since we don't want to get too in depth with you, especially you're not the NBA guy. I read all the comments for sure.
You're right, dude. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun. I begged you on the show and you let me. And to the people booing my golf attire today, you're damn right. I was just at the course and I shot at 89, boys. It's up in Kalamazoo. DG, I'll see you next time.
That is Greg Waddell, Sleepers Media. Be right back.
I think people knew, at least towards the end of the year, and he mentioned his mom being sick and battling throat cancer, I think it was, and different things. But like, he really opened up about it. I don't know that anybody knew about his mom having a stroke mid-season, leaves a shoot around, goes home to find his mom on the floor, and then had to basically leave her to still go coach a game.
It's crazy.
Like I can't, it puts things into perspective. It's just like, some things are more important than basketball. And so, yeah, to your point of him being distracted or focused on taking care of or the health of his mother, like, totally understandable. So no wonder a part of him probably feels personally attacked. I think if that had been out, and I'm not saying he should have put that out, like totally
No,
his family,
absolutely not.
privacy, whatever. I'm just saying, had it been out and people known that, I think he would have been given a lot more slack for what had occurred during the season.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
I don't know.
All right, let's get to a little bit of Ryan and the Grizzlies stuff. Ryan, hopefully everybody's nicer to you than they were to Greg, because, boy, they were lighting him up. But the walk-off from Greg, listen, that was one of the best. As Wayne said, Greg, we got to get you on again. And so it's gonna be a good time. But what's up, everybody? What's up to Drew? He is part of the $2 Sports Show. I almost said it wrong again, but $2 Sports Show. Check them out. They've been on Fridays, but I believe I just saw they might have been recording when I was coming on here, so I'm not sure if the show's coming out at a different time. But Ryan, what's up, man? How are you?
I almost put on a golf polo and hat just to try to confuse everybody, just for fun. But I was like, nah, I better not. Save the people.
Greg look like a Temu Mark McGrath. That's good stuff. All right, look at this new internet connection from Ryan. Listen, he moved, and so now he's in the Delta. Do you consider that area the Delta?
I have no idea. I haven't asked. We call it the Gulf Coast, I guess is about the best way you could describe it.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so the $2 Sports Show, they just recorded for a Friday because of the holidays, and so probably getting out of town doing some family stuff. But shout out to Drew for sure coming on here, hanging out. Let's talk about the Grizzlies. And so I have a lot of questions. So let's not go in depth if that can help. I know we talked a lot and Greg talked a lot about our guys, but let's get your thoughts on Edey, Jalen Wells, Cam Spencer. But let's go brief because we're already near the 50-minute mark. I don't want to go too much longer. Let's go about 15 or 20 minutes total, if that can help you. But let's go about a minute on Edey. Initial thoughts, very, very small here.
Well, I mean, during the draft show, I was shocked, right? Like, like if you're telling me Klingon and Edey are available at 9, are they still picking Edey? I don't think so. Okay. I mean, I get why people would like Edey. He does serve a purpose that we've missed from Steven Adams. My kind of question has always been, like, we had JV, we had Steven Adams, like Greg was saying. Now it's time to kind of grow up and evolve a little bit, right? Like we can win 50 to 52 games knowing that style, right? But we know it's capped out at a first or second round exit. Yeah. Like the Timberwolves, great. They made the Western Conference Finals, right? With Rudy Gobert. Is there kind of a ceiling to that? So for me with Edey, it's kind of like a wait and see because like he's going from being a focal point in college to where no one's really going to think about him. Right. And so he's going to have moments where he just absolutely dominates. I just don't know if you can really give like a scorecard on Edey till we see what it might look like in a playoff situation.
Yeah, I think that the ceiling is obviously potentially big, but also I think the floor is raised. And as Austin says, Gulfport, the Biloxi area, it's not the Delta. So listen, Austin, smarter than me. And then supposedly you've lost some weight. Have you been out there sweating for not sweating for the wedding, but it's just sweating?
Dude, it's very hot here. As soon as you walk outside, the humidity, glasses fog up, phone's wet in the hands, my shirts feel sticky immediately. So it's hot. Yeah.
Everybody's loving the new camera. And if you missed out the draft show, it was really good. Ryan was good. Chip was very good. And that's probably the last time we'll see of Nate right before he became a father. But now this is, if anybody doesn't realize, this is the last show of the summer. There is going to be no more. I don't believe, and I don't expect there to be any kind of pop-up shows for a summer league. I love the summer league. I enjoy it. I just don't think there's an audience there. And so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I just don't think there's an audience there. I'll take the 3 months off so I can prep, but also do some other things behind the scenes personally, as well as like kind of just keep my wife happy. And so that's why we're doing it. I don't think we're needed, especially there's so many good shows, so many Grizzlies good shows within Bluff City Media. I don't think we're needed. And that's just me being honest. I think everybody's going to cover the topics that we would cover as well. So we're going to take a little bit longer off than we normally do, but we'll be back for the post-game shows. Two little, I guess fits on maybe either Jalen Wells and Cam Spitzer if you want to hit on either one of them. Any thoughts on either one of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I like Cam Spencer a lot. Like he's just a competitor, right? And obviously there's size and athletic limitations, but I'm just always going to go with guys who are not afraid, right? Like it's like what we wish Jake LaRavia's mentality was like, Jake is 6'7", 6'8", that archetype, but he just doesn't have kind of like that mental toughness that Cam Spencer does. So it's just like basketball gods are not fair. Why couldn't you make Cam Spencer 6'7", 6'8", and we get this guy in the first round? But Jalen Wells, I also don't really see it with him. I mean, the catch and shoot at his size is enticing, but I'm not sure what else there is to his game, which is why I'm very excited for Summer League, right? We get our first look at these guys in action. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we'll see definitely all of them at some point. I would assume that they're all going to be on the floor together at some point as well. We'll kind of see that, but also see a little bit of how they look on an NBA level floor, but also the three-point line being back a little bit further than the college game. And so we'll see that and how they kind of spot up for there. All right, let's get into a lot of the questions that I have within revolving around free agency, but also the rest of the league. I got a question, and we're going to get into the free agency of it. I want to know, there is a changing of the guard happening right before our eyes. People aren't going to Golden State, except for former Grizzlies that, aren't so hot anymore. But then we're also talking about the Lakers. Nobody has really went there. So I want to ask you the question. All right, so I wrote these down, but the Clippers, Paul George left there, went out east. They were ranked, I believe they were finished up 4th. And then we had the Lakers, Golden State. Who am I missing? Lakers, Golden State, Clippers.
Like the kind of perennial, like large market teams?
Yeah, no, the former, like kind of big names. Oh, I'm sorry,
The
Phoenix.
old guard. Yeah.
The old guard. So out of the old guard, let's say LeBron, Curry, KD, and then you have, Kawhi Leonard and James Harden there together. Out of those teams, who do you think comes out of those 4 next year and is the better of the 4?
Of the 4 you listed, I would probably say it's between the Lakers and the Suns.
Okay.
The Suns still have the blueprint, right? Like they still have KD and Booker, whatever you think about Bradley Beal. The Lakers still have LeBron, even though he's 40 plus in AD.
Yeah.
So if you had to rank those, they're probably 1A, 1B to me. I just don't see it from the Warriors. I don't see it from the Clippers. They made obvious moves to push this down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's free agency. Like you can be surprised very quickly in this time of year.
Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of these guys. I don't think any one of those 4 teams will be higher than 5. I think 5 is kind of the limit. But the simple fact is you have OKC who got better. The Timberwolves who got better. You had the Grizzlies get better. Denver's still there, even though they had some people that they lost. I still think in a regular season, I still believe in the Joker being one of the best players. You also have the Mavs there. There's so many of those teams. There's going to be injuries. I get that. I just don't see how they're going to be in the top 4. And so out of the old guard, I just think that unless they just play crazy good or just surprises with some kind of big trade or a big free agent that we don't know about, that nobody else knows about, maybe Tyus Jones going to Golden State and just getting everybody back from the Grizzlies. Like, I just don't see anything happening with those 4 teams. And so I think the old guard is quickly leaving, and I think that's surprising. I think it happened a lot sooner than people expected.
Well, they've been in our lives so long, right? Like LeBron's 2003. Like this is 21 years of him, right? 22, 21. I can't remember exactly, but like pretty much basically my entire adult life and most of, like middle school years. This man has been playing professional basketball at the highest level. So it's just always weird when you move on because everyone's always looking for who's the next great, right? And they always try to pick whoever it is. And it's always weird when you change a guard like that because it's kind of a fight for who's that going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody wants to go to the Lakers to play behind Bronny, as D'Angelo says. That's the truth. All right. So, Black Ninja just saying the playoffs show the changing of the guard. I think it's happening. And I think it's right before our eyes with all these guys. hopefully the Grizzlies are a part of that. All right, let's talk about free agency or what's happening with the Grizzlies, because nothing has happened. Okay. Did you expect that?
I mean, I think I expected it after they said they were pushing off the Luke Kennard decision.
Okay.
I was like, okay, they're probably kind of keeping their powder dry, so to speak, to see what's going to happen.
Right.
I'm not one who freaks out about the first couple days of moves. Most of these signings are going to be awful. Like, it just is what it is. Like Jonathan Isaac getting almost $20 million a year for the Magic. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about that because, you know, we know the Grizz are never going to tell us what they're going to do, right? They're never going to, you know, you're never going to kind of find I don't know the best way to describe this, but you're never going to find like footprints in the snow, right? That leads to something. Yeah. You're always either just going to be surprised by what they do, and you're going to be like, oh, that actually makes sense now. Why didn't we think about that before? So I'm not worried. It's a long off season. Plenty of things can happen. And usually it happens 3 weeks after the free agency rush hits, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning and we get a Woj bomb alert. And it's like, what? How? So I'm not worried. It's a long summer. And yeah, I'm just not worried about it at all.
All right, so we got a question from Lightning DJ, and he's asking you, you know, the Grizzlies this offseason, who gets traded in your opinion?
Well, I mean, obviously there's ideal players that you would like to trade, right? The problem is like, who wants them?
Right.
Like Zaire Williams, Jake LaRavia, like the end of the bench guys. Yeah, you want to trade those guys to upgrade your roster, but you have to have someone who's willing to take that on. And I just don't think there is anybody who wants that. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of floating around about Marcus Smart. I don't know who that intrigues except for a ready-made contender right now, but you're probably getting peanuts from whoever that team is anyways in the form of some future picks. So are you getting value back from that? Probably not. So it makes sense to kind of hold on to him. So I don't know who they trade. I think ideally be end of bench guys, but you got to have someone willing to take them.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is you got to have two players there willing to kind of play ball in a sense. If I'm looking at this team, I know a lot of people had made, I guess, brought stuff up about different players. And there's people that are left out there right now. I know Daniel Tice has been, you know, kind of, I guess, rumored to be potentially being the backup center get in free agency for the Grizzlies. Why is that good or why is that bad?
Because why would he play alongside Brandon Clark or take his small ball 5 minutes? Like, I don't really understand that fit. He makes sense as like a third center, which is names like Drew Eubanks was the names being thrown out there for cheap deals. Like, to me, it's kind of a third center or breaking case of emergency type of thing. So like, I know everybody was kind of tossing around the name Jalen Smith, and he goes to wherever for $9 million a year. Like, I don't want Jalen Smith for $9 million a year for what he is going to play in a role on this team. So, yeah, I mean, I get it if you just need insurance.
Yeah.
But I'm not featuring him. Like, I'm not signing him to be like, hey, you're going to be a pretty key part of what we're doing this year.
Yeah. Is he a guy that you think like not him in specific, but like a player like that, if for some reason you have a big injury and you need to go get somebody that's just still out there, he would be a guy that you could say, hey, he's still available in the free agency after the season starts, or maybe leading up into a training camp, or you bring him on a training camp roster to see what he kind of fits in your team and see if you could be your third big. I think that's the kind of guy that you look at. All right, let's look at the other reasons. And I want you to kind of explain a little bit of what type of player you're looking for, either in a free agent, which has kind of drawn up, but also in a trade. What kind of guy are you looking for this team? Because I've seen so many names out there. I've seen DFS. I've also seen these other guys. Who's out there in Utah? Not Walker Kessler. Not actually somebody good, Lori from marketing, but who is the other guys?
Colin Sexton or
whatever his name is, the shooter, the wiry guy.
I cannot think of his name right now.
Why would you not want, let's say, Colin Sexton, a player like that? Like, why do they not move the needle?
I just don't think they improve your team from what you currently are, right? Like, I'm interested in actual upgrades. Colin Sexton would be a fine backup, but there's a clear ceiling on what he could be, right? Like, he's kind of a chucker. Like, he needs that runway. And the Utah Jazz could give him that runway because what were they doing anyways? Yeah. So on this team, he has to be more reserved and more of a Tyus Jones type, right? And that's just not who Colin Sexton is. He just needs the ball to be efficient. And I'm not interested in guys who need the ball to be efficient. I'm looking for, wing swing types that secondary create and put pressure on the rim as well, hopefully shoot a little bit. But you're just not finding those guys for less than $20 million a year, right?
Right.
That is going to be a bench player. Like, it's just not going to happen. So to me, I'm fine with the rotation that we have right now. There's no one out there with all and I don't really pay attention to free agent names too much. Like, I know DeMar DeRozan is like what everybody's talking about now with the Lakers, but would he be interesting on our team? Yeah, for the kind of style that he plays. He's kind of the long ball 2 individual creation. Yeah, that would be cool. But does he stop the ball a lot? Yeah. And does he take the ball out of Ja's hand too much for it to work? And, the more the ball is out of Ja and Desmond Bane's hand, our 2 main creators, I just don't like it. Right? Right. It's just not ideal offensively for me.
Yeah. And that's where I am. My opinion has been with all the names, and the other name was Jordan Clarkson. I know we didn't forget about the player. We just forgot about the name, connecting those two. But I don't see those as being an upgrade, like a big upgrade to your top 8 players. So if I look at my top 8 players, obviously you have the big 4, right? You have Ja, Jaren, Bane, and then you can add Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart is one of the 4 best players on this team as currently right now. I don't love his fit next to Ja. That's a whole nother deal. But I'm saying on his own, I think Marcus Smart's good. You bring in Zach Edey, Gigi, but also another young guy and Vince Williams, who everybody loves. I think those 3 are guys that I'm not moving unless it's a big player in a trade, right? There's no way I'm touching those guys unless you just wow me and I didn't realize you were about to wow me, right? So we're talking about 7 guys, right? I just want to upgrade the 8th guy. So at that point, can you upgrade the 8th guy? And who is that? Is that Brandon Clark? Is that Santi Aldama? Who else? Anybody else that you want to throw into that? If you want to upgrade them, I'm fine with a move. Besides that, I don't really care.
Yeah, but like, who's would be considered an upgrade that didn't require a 25 to 30 minute a game time slot, right? To be considered an upgrade. Right. Like, to me, it's a 3. It's Ja, Bane, Triple J. Right. The other 2, you could talk me into any combination, which is a good problem to have. But what we haven't seen in the past with this team is they're willing to mix and match those lineups based on who they're playing. Right. And that's a coaching decision, right? Not going into that rabbit hole. But like, if you said next year it's Ja, Bane, Jaren, and Marcus is starting in Edey, okay, fine. If you told me it was Vince Williams Jr. and Brandon Clark starting with the other 3, okay, I'm fine. Like, my ideal, most fun offensive lineup is those 3 with Gigi and Vince. Like, that is a super versatile. Good luck trying to stop that lineup. Right. But will it be feature line? Probably not. But it's just, it's what you're going to do with Luke. I'm very curious what they're going to do with that. Can you upgrade from Luke? What does that upgrade look like? Like, this taking a 40+% career 3-point shooter and switching him for a Dorian Finney-Smith, who has had some decent shooting years, but is older. What is he, 31, 32 now? I'd have to double check that, but that's a guess. To be more of the defensive swing type. I mean, we saw the Mavericks go from Derek Jones Jr. to Najee Marshall.
Right.
That's just a 1-for-1 switch to me overall. They do a little bit different things, right? But I know a lot of Pelicans fans, they love Najee Marshall. Are you like, is that trade-off from Luke to someone like Dorian Finney-Smith, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Does it matter? That's the thing. Does it really matter?
Yeah, I don't think it matters. And that's kind of where I'm stuck at is I need to upgrade the top 8. If it's getting off of a Marcus Smart and bringing in somebody else that's going to be a better version, whether they're the same type, whether the same level player, but a better fit, I'm okay. That's still an upgrade, right? In my opinion, overall. If you're talking about, not signing a guy than Luke Kennard, but going out and get somebody else that might fit better on this team or might shoot really good, but isn't just a shooter. He might do a little bit of something else, just hasn't been as consistent. Maybe that's fine too. I'm okay with all of those. If you just got to give me some kind of an upgrade in an area, that's the only thing I look at. The other guys, whatever, I'm fine with them. If you go into this season, just like Lightning DJ was saying, is upgrade may have to come in a trade down the road, which could be in season. This team as currently constructed is a 50-win team, in my opinion. If everybody stays healthy, I think they can easily win 50 games. I think they're that good on paper. It just depends on if they can figure out Edey, if they can figure out these other guys. I think they'll be good enough. All right, last question, and we'll get out of here because I know we're already over our time. But Ryan, Drew wants to know if the roster doesn't change, who are the second-round rookies and two-ways should round out the opening day roster? So let me preface it a little bit. You got Trey Jemison, who's on a two-day. Also, Scottie Pippen's on two-way. Both these guys are on a two-way. We have one two-way spot open. Zach Edey took one roster spot. He's going to be on the main roster. There could be potentially one roster spot open. That should be Luke Kennard if they were going to sign him or somebody else. But then you have Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer. So they got to fit in here somewhere. I don't think you release anybody just outright. So your thoughts on how that works out?
I mean, if I knew that Derrick Rose was good to go all the time, I would probably lean to someone like Cam Spencer. But I think ultimately it would be Scottie Pippen Jr. That would be my selection for that spot based on the names that you listed. Yeah. Because Derrick Rose we love Derrick Rose, right? Like a hometown kid or a hometown favorite. But he plays one game every 3 weeks. Like that's just the reality of his situation, which is fine. So you're going to need Scottie Pippen Jr., I think, at some point. Like, I don't want him to be the main backup. But I think for that last roster spot, if it doesn't change, it makes more sense to go with Scottie Pippen Jr. to me.
So, if your opinion, if you had a choice, you would love to sign Scottie Pippen Jr. to a main roster contract, which is obviously something small. But then you're going to give the two ways to our guys we just drafted, which would be Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer. So you send them down to the G League, limited contract. The upside is there, but right now they're just not ready.
Yeah. I mean, is Lamar Stevens, he's actually signed, right?
No.
Okay, he's not signed.
Not signed.
Yeah. Okay. So if he's in the mix, then I'm probably giving it to Lamar Stevens.
And that's the other thing. Yeah.
If he's not going to be, if they're not going to try to retain him, then it just kind of war of attrition here. It's going to be Scottie Pippen Jr. for me.
Yeah. And Drew wants to know, do we know when these decisions have to be made? Listen, it's not before Summer League. But I know that they were talking about potentially making them sooner rather than later. But I don't know if there's a time when you have to. I think by training camp is the only time you have to make those decisions, is because going into training camp, you have to have a set roster, but also you can have a training camp roster. You have to have a lot of the pieces fit, but you don't have to actually make a decision. I don't believe until then. Any idea?
Yeah, I don't think there is a set, like you have to have a finalized roster.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not sure how the invites work on that, but I'm pretty sure they can do basically whatever they want all summer, leading up even towards the end of training camp, I believe. Okay. But like that's kind of one of the things about Edey that is interesting, right? Is he's turning down playing for Canada, which gives me like, I like my conspiracy theories, which gives me the idea that they're planning to give him a major role to start, and he's getting a summer crash course on all of that. So would it surprise me if he's a day one starter? No, because if you're skipping something like that, then I mean, that's probably Kleiman and company saying, hey, you've got a big role in this team. You've got 3 months to get ready. And we're trying to win 55 games this year, be back at top of the West. So is that an encouraging sign? Could it mean nothing? Possibly. Yeah. But just my nature, like it's just immediately bells went off like, okay, this might be your day one starter then if he's going to be working all summer with the Grizzlies training staff.
Yeah, no, I think there's big things to come for sure. But listen, as Drew said, he was out on Edey. So was I. But when he gave the finger to Canada, we're big fans. Listen, shout out to Zach Edey. Shout out to Greg for coming out for sure and giving us a fun time there. You know what? The first thing he did is he texted me and said, "Dude, I apologize. I wasn't kind of as charismatic. I didn't. It just felt like it was just nothing." And honestly, that's how it is sometimes. Is I was wanting to know how he felt about Zach Edey, and he was getting fired up. Dude, Greg is one of the best guys. I follow him because he's entertaining. But he also, shares a lot of his knowledge and, is very knowledgeable of the college game. They do like kind of the Midwest basketball for sure, a lot more. But they do a very good job over at Sleepers Media. So if you're not a fan, if you're not subscribed already over to Sleepers Media, go ahead and do it now. Listen, Ryan, this is our last show of the summer. I know that you're probably going to be more involved than you have been with Grizz 901, probably the post-game shows, because listen, we have Nate being a new daddy. And so we'll get ready for the post-game show. So I hope everybody kind of joins us back. We're going to have a show on October the 1st. Okay. So if everybody's aware, long time from now, right? We're at July 2nd. But October 1st, getting ready for training camp, getting ready for the season. Preseason is going to be there. We'll try to do some shows. We'll see how we match up on our dates, but we're thinking Tuesdays might be the best time again, just kind of leading up into it. But as Lightning D just saying, he's like a Grizz 901 cookout. Listen, I'm always down for a cookout. Getting invited to the cookout's the first win. And then once we have it, we're down. But yeah, listen, me and Ryan have not talked about this at all. So he's probably, just like, what are you talking about? But hopefully Ryan is going to help us out a little bit more with post-game stuff, just kind of being a regular as he was last year. But now that he's moved, potentially has more times because he's not coaching as much at night. So his time could kind of be a little bit more open depending on what happens with him. But man, it's gonna be a fun time for me to be off for 3 months. What are you gonna do?
Work and sweat, and that's about it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got. Ryan, thanks so much. But shout out to Greg from Sleepers Media. Make sure you go follow him. But also follow, me. I'm at Daniel Greer, but Nate as well at Mem Grizz Homer. Go give him a shout out. Tell him congrats. And the next time you'll see him will probably be when you see me. We'll be back here on October 1st. But besides that, that's it. Be nice and tell your friends.